What's the story, Morning Glory? What is a word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this quick conversation about a couple of cases that I came across that I thought was really interesting to talk about on my channel. So the first one involves a man by the name of Andrew Charles Beard from Carrollton, Texas. So he had recently been convicted and sentenced to 43 years in federal prison. Now let's talk about what got him 43 years in prison. So back in 2020, him and his ex-girlfriend Alyssa Ann Burkett were involved in a heated custody battle over their young daughter. Now, the things that he did to this woman in this custody battle situation, I think went far beyond trying to get custody of his daughter. I think he just had this vendetta against his ex-girlfriend for whatever. I'm going to assume maybe over the breakup of their relationship and her being able to move on. I don't really know, but he really had it out for this young woman. So it was so bad that he had put a GPS tracker on her car and also on her boyfriend's car as well. He had planted drugs and a gun in her car and then called the police on her. When the police confronted her about these allegations of selling drugs from her car and possessing a weapon, she had vehemently denied that she was involved in the sale of drugs, and she said that it had to have been her ex-boyfriend who had framed her. And Burkett, the ex-girlfriend, she was so worried for her safety that she had told several people that she was in fear of her life and her daughter's life as well. Her current boyfriend had said that Beard had a very abnormal, unusual obsession with Burkett and their young daughter. So in October of 2020, Burkett, the ex-girlfriend, arrives at her place of employment, and the person who was already there waiting for her was Andrew Beard. So as she parked her car in front of her building, he automatically started shooting into her car, on the driver's side of her car where she was seated, and he had shot her several times. Some of these shots had landed in her head. Now, throughout all of this, she was able to somehow get herself out of the car and make it to the front of her building. But when Beard realized that she was still alive, he chased her to where she was at in the front of the building, and he proceeded to stab her 13 times. Now, what made this article interesting to me is the fact that when he had committed this atrocious crime, he was in blackface. He had covered his face in dark makeup, and he was also wearing a dark colored beard so that he would appear as an African American man. In fact, witnesses who came to Burkett's aid when they called 911, they had said that the suspect or the perpetrator was an African American man. Eventually, the police catch up to him. He ends up confessing to his crimes, and because of this, he got 43 years in prison. Now, this case really angered me, because as if black people don't have enough to worry about with prejudices, with racism, with dealing with stereotypes and all this other stuff that we have to deal with. Now we have to worry about other races putting their crimes on us. And this reminded me of the case of Susan Smith. This was back in the 90s, where this young mother was having an affair on her husband, the father of her children. She was seeing another man, and her boyfriend or her side piece did not want children. So she envisioned that she would leave her husband and go be with her lover. But the problem is her lover did not want children at all, period. So in order to appease him and to better her chances of being with him, she decides to murder her own two little boys. And she murdered them by strapping them in the car and pushing the car into a lake where her children eventually ended up drowning. And she blamed a black person for this crime, and she even gave a description. I mean, there's the description that she gave and the sketch that they had released to the public of what this person looked like. It was comical. It looked very stereotypically black. It had the extremely dark skin, the extremely thick, light colored lips. I mean, it looked like it was just comical. So this is a person that she had claimed had pushed her children into the lake. So eventually she was found out. Her story was falling apart all over the place, and she ended up getting, I think she got either the death penalty or life in prison. I'm not really sure. I know that she is still currently alive and still serving time in prison. So this story, when I read this, it was just like, oh my God. It's just like the fact that these people would commit these really heinous crimes against the mother of their children, against their own children, and then blame it on a black person. It's just like they just feel like, you know what, let's just say that some black person did it. They're going to automatically believe that above anything else. And we'll let, you know, the cops go on this wild goose chase, thinking that some black person did it. And because, you know, we're automatically seen as criminals, you know, they're going to go down this rabbit hole of looking for this black person, and they'll never think that a white person could have done it, or anybody close to the victims could have done it. And so that really angered me when I read this story. So eventually he confessed to his crime, and he was sentenced to 43 years. Now, the fact that it was only 43 years and not life in prison just kind of blew my mind, I guess, because if he confessed, I'm thinking maybe he had a plea deal. He accepted a plea deal. And so to avoid life in prison or to avoid the death penalty, they gave him 43 years instead. But it's just atrocious, you know, it's just, anyways. So the next case that I wanted to talk about, now let's move on to Georgia. So a former sheriff deputy by the name of Jason Moose Cunningham, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison plus 5 years for possession of a weapon and the commission of a felony. Now, what did he do to get 35 years behind bars? Well, he shot and killed his 37-year-old mistress, Nicole Harrington. Now, Mr. Jason Moose Cunningham, he's a married man. He has a whole wife, and he was cheating on his wife with this Nicole Harrington. Well, Nicole Harrington, I guess, was feeling kind of lonely, and so she started spending time with a whole other man. Now, when Jason Moose Cunningham heard of this, he confronted her about it. You know, why are you spending time with someone else when you're supposed to be with me? And so they got into a heated argument over this, and what sealed her fate was when she said to Mr. Cunningham, well, at least my current man is much more well endowed than you. Well, it didn't take much. After she said that, he pulled out his weapon and he shot and killed her. And now he is serving 30 years in prison for letting his little ego get bruised. Man. I don't want to turn this political about, you know, gun control or anything like that, but it's just, we do hear stories of people, you know, protecting themselves with their weapons. And we do hear lots of stories like that, but it seems like there are more stories where people have very easy access to these weapons and are using them just willy-nilly because they're mad at their ex-girlfriends for not letting them have their kid, or they're mad at their mistresses for making fun of their anatomy. And these people are losing their lives over nothing, basically, just over nothing. Anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. On your way out, please don't forget to rate the video. And if you like this content, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll definitely talk to you later. Bye.